Hey, Scott Sambucci here over at Sales Qualia, and it is a Go Farther Friday. What do I mean, like Go Farther Friday? Look, every day I'm writing posts, doing videos, sharing ideas around sales, and I think those are all really important from a tactical strategic standpoint. Today, what I want to talk about is making sure that you're 100% clear on what limits you might be putting on yourself that you might not even know about when it comes to building out leads, building out your pipeline, and ultimately growing your company the way that you want to grow it. So what I want to do here is I want to show you two key models here in this conversation that we're going to have today. And the first one is more of a conceptual model on how you need to be thinking about your sales process and what are the key elements to flowing from your target ICP, your ideal customer profile, to the place of getting cash flow, which is what we all want. And the second thing I'm going to show you is really more of a challenge. It's a challenge to you to look at your calendar, look and assess your level of conviction, and really ask yourself, are you getting the help that you could be getting when it comes to building out your sales process? Or are you just kind of winging it? So I'm pretty pumped up about this because, as I talk to company founders every single day, as I work with our clients every single day, there's a number of sales activities that all of us do each and every day. And at least I hope we're doing those each and every day. But the challenge is just because you're doing the activities, just because you're busy doing sales, doesn't mean necessarily you're doing sales the right way. And so what I want to do here is build out this first model for you. And I want you to think of it as a really simple function, right? When you look at sales, like we can treat sales as a really simple function. Sales or growth is really just a function, and the math people out there are going to like this. It's a function of contacts that you're making, who you're contacting, when you're contacting them, what messages you're sharing with them, where you're contacting them. It's a function of contacts. It's a function of conversations. What kind of engagement are you getting when you're sending out those messages? What kind of engagement are you getting in order to identify problems, in order to qualify those leads? And thirdly, it's a function of conversions. How are we converting those deals in our pipeline when we know we have a problem that we can solve? And so when you think about the model from a shape standpoint, I like to think of it almost like a flow chart, where if we think about these three parts, so you can draw along with me and have three triangles that sort of overlap with each other. So we got 1, 2, 3 triangles. And where we start with every sale and every sales process is over here on the left. We want to start with our ICP. What's our ideal customer profile? Who are we targeting and why are we targeting them? So number one, if you're not 100% clear on who your ICP is, or at least if you don't at least have a hypothesis on who your ICP is, then you've got to stop right now, because if you don't have an ICP in mind, then what's going to end up happening is you're going to end up doing the spray and pray and the batch and blast, and ultimately those customers that you do get are going to end up dictating the direction that you go with your company, as opposed to you dictating the direction you go based on the impact that you want to make. So we start with an ICP, and what we intend to get through this flowchart at the end, of course, is revenue or growth or customers, right? And so if we think about these three variables, if you will, in the model here: contacts, conversations, and conversions, right? So number one is contacts. Number two is conversations. And number three is conversions. It's like the three-step process. And number one, the two things that you've really got to focus in on when it comes to the context that you're making, the number of people that you are sending your messages out to, whether it's outbound, the people that you're contacting here on LinkedIn or on other mediums, is making sure that, number one, what is the message that you're sending, right? Is the message useful? Is it valuable? Is it clear? Is there a value proposition? Is there a reason that ICP, that person that you're contacting via email or phone or LinkedIn message or whatever other way that you're contacting people, is the message clear for that person? Do they know, hey, this is why I'm getting this message in the first place? And number two, you need to think about, what are the mediums that you're using? And notice the plural here, mediums, that you're using to make those contacts, to do that outreach, right? We know it's not enough to just send emails. We know it's not enough just to make phone calls. We know it's not enough just to send LinkedIn messages. Right? It's a number of mediums that you've got to put into your sequence when you're going out and making those contacts to make sure that you've got a full and complete opportunity for your contacts to reply back to you. Because what we're trying to do here ultimately with the right message across multiple mediums, when you have the right contacts and you're doing this the right way with the number of messages, the right people, and focusing on the right message, what you get is this overlap between contacts and conversation in this box. And what you're looking for initially is what I think of as cooperation or engagement, right? All we're trying to do with those initial messages out to those contacts is to create a conversation. We're looking for some level of engagement. We're looking for some level of cooperation. Do they want to engage with us, right? Because that conversation is what's going to allow us as sellers to do two key things that we need to do with these conversations. Number one is we need to do problem identification. Does this person that I've contacted even have the problem that we solve? If they have the problem, how much of a priority is it for them? What's that problem potentially costing them if they don't solve it, right? And the second thing we need to do in those conversations is a level of qualification. And you've heard me, if you watched any of my other videos, you've heard me talk about the importance of lead qualification and how lead qualification in itself is one of the 9 sales accelerators, right? So you've got to, in those conversations, before you worry about conversions, right? You've got to make sure you've got really clear problem identification and that you have qualified that lead. You've qualified that opportunity. And if we've done that right, then that second overlap here between conversations and conversions are dependent on 2 main things. It's really simple. Number one is value creation. Is there an ROI? What would be the return on investment if your customer ended up taking action with you so that you're not a cost? They're not searching for budget. They look at what you do and say, hey, we have this problem. Yes, we match. Our situation matches the kind of problems that you solve every day. And if we make this purchase and do this, move this thing forward, then we're going to get return on investment because our problem is going to be solved. And the second piece that we need to think about and focus on in those conversions is implementation. Showing our target customers how we are going to help them get the results that we're promising to them. So number one is showing them what the ROI would be if and when we solve that problem. And number two, showing them how we're going to make sure that we fulfill on our end of the promise and show them how they're going to get the return on investment that they want. So if we do this the right way, right, that's how you get from your target market, your ideal customer profile, through to cash flow, through to revenue, right? So here's the problem. And this is where I have to kind of put my coach hat on a little bit here. And this is the part where, maybe you're not going to want to hear this. And maybe this is going to hit home a little bit too close to home. Because what ends up happening too often is that when we think about many times when I look at the sales strategies, the outbound strategies, the outreach strategies that companies are using every single day in their sales process, they're not looking at the ICP. They're not looking at that target customer. They're not looking at the contacts with a really clear message, and they're not thinking about what are the right mediums by which they should be contacting those targets. And so what ends up happening, instead of having a really clear message across the right mediums, what they end up doing is what we all know as batch and blast. Right? You've probably heard some version of this before, batch and blast. I got a bunch of contacts that I've purchased a list, scraped a list, paid a virtual assistant to go and get for me. And what I'm doing right now is batch and blast, hoping that I get some level of replies back, right? I send out 1,000 emails. I hope I get 3 replies and 1 demo booked. And that brings me to the second part. This is the second mistake that I see a lot of people do in their sales process, is that instead of focusing on conversations, what they're focusing on is the old book a demo, right? Everything we're doing too often in selling is not really selling. All we're trying to do is push people into the demo. And I talked about this in a recent video where I talked about having demo design. That's another sales accelerator. Being really, really clear about how you're setting up your demo and making sure that your prospects deserve the demo. Do they earn the demo? Is it even worth their time to see the demo? And that goes back to qualification and problem identification. So if you're not doing those two things, if you're not having conversations, if you're not identifying the problem, if you're not qualifying your target customer before you're just like pushing them into a demo, you're just not doing it the right way, and you're gonna end up doing is wasting their time and wasting your time. And then the third mistake I end up seeing on the third piece here on conversions is what I call the 3 Ps. Right? So number one, we're sharing pricing really quick, early in the sale. Somebody asks how much is it, we tell them how much it is. And when we share that price, there's no concept for that customer around value creation. There's no concept around risk mitigation or implementation. So we go ahead and we share that pricing. We go ahead and ship over the proposal because they asked for it. Hey, can you send me a proposal? We send the proposal and we wait for them to get back to us. And you know when they get back to us? On the 19th. The 19th of never. That's when they get back to you on the proposal. And that's the third P, is a prayer. When it comes to conversions, we're going to share the price, send a proposal, and then just pray that they accept, that they want to go forward. And so the reason I said in my pre LinkedIn Live post that some people might not like what I'm going to share here is that the problem is these underneath this model, batch and blast, pushing people into a demo, doing pricing, sending a proposal, and then praying, those are actually the easy things to do. And we end up spending a lot of time doing the wrong activities. And we're not really looking at our sales process and what it takes to be effective. And it's hard, right? It's easy to sit down and type up a 5 email sequence and then, plug that into whatever tool you're using to send out your outbound emails and click send, and then go back to working on product, or then go back to worrying about engineering stuff, and then go back to other stuff and work on marketing stuff as opposed to sales stuff, right? So we fool ourselves into thinking like, well, this is how you do outbound. And that's the easy way to do it. And that's the efficient way to do it. And that's the easy way to scale it, right? Is the old batch and blast. But if instead, if I were to say to you, look, instead of doing the standard 5 email sequence that everyone's using and setting that up in automation, if I said to you instead, look, we're going to sit down for a couple of hours and just work on your message. We're going to work on email number 1. And we're going to do the research and really understand where your prospects are spending their time. What are the right mediums? And how do we interweave an email with a phone call, with a LinkedIn connection request, with an invitation to a webinar where they can come join us and learn more about the problem that we solve? That's really hard, right? It's really hard. And the same with conversations, right? It's easy to just like send 1,000 emails, push people into a demo, say to ourselves, great, we send 1,000 emails, we've got 3 demos booked. Great job, me, right? It takes time, it takes effort, it takes focus. It takes a sense of control to say to yourself and say to the prospect, hey, before we get onto a demo, maybe we can understand more about your problem. Maybe we can understand more about your situation. What's the history of this problem? What other solutions have you tried? What's it going to cost you if you don't act on this problem? Those things take time, right? And on conversions, the same thing. Like do the demo, like great, batch and blast, book the demo. After the demo, people say send the proposal. Great, here's the pricing, here's the proposal, let me just pray. I've done sales. That's not sales, right? Real selling to the enterprise requires you to sit down and do that ROI assessment, to show value creation, to get really, really clear with your prospect as to what the implementation is going to look like, to build out that plan of action for the first day and the first week and the first month and the first quarter. Those things take time, right? And so that's my challenge to you. If you think about how you're doing sales right now, and this is not everyone, but I know it's a lot of people out there, there's basically 3 things that you need to look at to assess whether or not you're really willing to do sales the right way, right? 3 things underneath this. So number 1 is you've got to look at your calendar, right? There's this old saying, show me your calendar and I'll show you your cash flow, right? And what I mean by that, if you're doing the batch and blast and pushing people into a demo and then sending out some proposals and then hoping that's going to lead to sales, what you're really telling yourself is, I hope that we'll get some sales someday. Someday we'll grow. Like you don't have a really clear plan. Instead, what you've got to do is make sales an everyday activity. This is an everyday activity, right? It's not something you do, send out a bunch of emails on Monday, book some demos for Wednesday, send out proposals on Friday. That's not what we're talking about here. or what we're talking about in terms of your calendar. When you look at your calendar, are you really spending the time to craft those emails? Are you really spending the time with your prospects to understand their problem, to have 2 and 3 and 4 conversations with the different buyer types that you know you're going to have to engage with, right? Because you have to go from that initial engagement to a place of cooperation with them and collaboration, right? Because if you don't get the collaboration, then it's going to be really, really hard for you and for them to justify that expense. So that's number one places you can look is your calendar. The number two thing the second place you can look is at your conviction. And this is something, it's almost like your personal culture around sales. Because if you don't have really clear conviction about doing sales and making sales the number one priority for doing the outreach, not because I got to get sales, but because you want to go out and share the message. Like you started your company. You're selling what you sell because you want to go out and solve problems. And if you don't have conviction around that, if you don't look at a set of target customers that you know you could help, and you don't take the action to do the right messaging, to do the outreach to them, to let them know that you exist, that you might be able to help them. If you don't have that conviction, what you're really subscribing to is a strategy of hope. Right? I hope that we sell more stuff. I hope people learn about us. I hope people will book in a demo. Right? Instead, if you have the right conviction, and you know this because of the way you started your company. When you started your company, you had this level of conviction around building the product, solving the problem, serving the customers that you want to serve. Sales is no different, right? But you've got to have conviction around doing sales every day. And when you have conviction, what you become is unstoppable, right? Think about any time you've had conviction about something you really wanted to do, an outcome that you really wanted to get to. Chances are you had this feeling of conviction which made you unstoppable no matter what barriers came up, no matter what problems got thrown in your way, what challenges, whatever obstacles got in your way or slowed you down or potentially was going to stop you. You said, no, I'm going to be unstoppable on this because you had conviction. And the third place where I would challenge almost everyone out there is, are you getting into the classroom? Are you getting coaching? Do you have people around you that are helping you do a better job on your messaging, do a better job on your sales system, do a better job on converting your clients? Because yes, it's easy to go onto LinkedIn and read some articles. It's easy to go ahead and crack open a book. But this is related to both calendar and conviction, right? In your calendar every week, are you sitting down and blocking out time to get better? Are you making time for your team to get better? Are you spending time with your team and reviewing the messaging and coaching them? Are you getting coached yourself on how you could be doing better each and every day? Because it's easy for us to sit down and say, look, I'm too busy. I got to send out these messages, or I got to book these demos, or I got to do these demos, or I got to work on this proposal. But I know I'm not doing as good as I could be doing, but this is like good enough for now. And then you just keep kicking the can down the road, right? And then days go by and weeks go by and months go by, and you're just doing the same stuff over and over and over and wondering why you're not getting the revenue and the growth that you're looking for. You've got to have conviction, and you've got to put the time in your calendar to get into the classroom, to get some coaching help. And so if you don't get the coaching help that you need to get, where you're going to end up is this place of status quo. And the unfortunate thing about status quo is while we think we're staying level, we're actually getting worse. Because status quo is based on the environment each and every day. You think you're keeping your head above water, but we all know there's stuff happening. The market is changing. The customer needs are changing. Competitors are coming into the marketplace. And so all we're trying to do is tread water and keep things as status quo. What's happening is that more and more pressure is getting pushed on us, and we're actually getting pushed down, down, and down. So status quo is actually not status quo. Status quo means you're actually worse off than you were the day before, the week before, the month before. And so instead, if you are spending the time, if you have the conviction, you put the time in your calendar to get in the classroom, to get some coaching help, then what you end up with is speed. So when you make the time, you have conviction, you're getting help, you're making sales an everyday activity. You're accepting that, hey, that I have conviction around the message. I have conviction around the people that I want to reach. I have conviction around the people I want to help. And no matter what, I'm going to go out there and share my message the right way with the right people that I know I can help. That is that feeling of unstoppability. And then finally, if you're getting the help that you need from people that can help you go faster, then you get speed. And when you get speed, you get to grow faster. And so I've been thinking a lot about this over the last couple of weeks because just like I get LinkedIn emails, in-mails, I get cold emails into my inbox. I'm getting cold calls on my phone, and I'm looking at how people are selling, and I'm watching companies how they sell each and every day, and I know what's happening. I know what they're doing is they're saying like, oh, I know the batch and blast isn't the way I'm supposed to be doing it, but that's just good enough. That's all I have time to do right now because I got this other product stuff to do. I've got this other customer thing to do, or I've got this other engineering thing to do, right? And so they're not doing it the right way. And the same with like booking the demo. Like, I know it sucks to get on a demo and somebody's really not qualified, but they requested the demo and they responded to the email, so let me just go ahead and give them the demo. And all you're doing is wasting your time and wasting their time. And too often I see people that are just sending out proposals. They think they've got this big pipeline because they've sent out a bunch of proposals. The chances are 80-90% of those, what they think are sales opportunities, aren't even deals in the first place. They're not even qualified. And so my challenge to you is to get really, really clear. Like, look at your calendar. Do you have conviction? Are you getting help? Are you getting yourself and your team into the classroom so you can get better on this, so that sales becomes an everyday thing, so that you can become unstoppable and you can do it really quickly? So that's my Go Farther Friday message. There's nothing in the world that from a business standpoint, that's more important to me than helping companies get out of this rut, to get out of this negative spiral, this cycle where they think they're doing sales the right way, and they probably know in their heart of hearts they're not. And so that's my challenge to you in the beginning. Check your calendar. Do you have conviction? Are you getting help? Are you getting into the classroom? Are you learning? Are you really making time to get better for you and your team? Because if you do those things the right way, that's what's going to help you make the impact that you want to make in your market. That's why you started the company in the first place. You can't make the impact until you have more customers, and you can't get more customers until you do sales the right way. This is just this is an absolute. You cannot get to the place you want to go until you make sales the number one priority, period. So that's it. That's my message. I needed to get that off my chest. Maybe it was a little bit of a rant. I don't know. If you think this message is useful for you, or it could be useful for somebody else, you can like and share this post. I would really appreciate that. If you think you want some help with getting better, making sales a priority, doing a better job with your messaging, doing a better job with problem identification and qualification, doing a better job around how do we have those right conversations around value creation and implementation. These are all the kinds of systems. These are all selling systems that my team and I help startups implement every single day. So if you want some more help with this, you just send me a DM or write a comment here on this post. Just type the word now down below. Like, let's make this a now thing. Hey, let's make this a now thing for you. If this is a now thing for you, not like a Q1 or a Q never thing for you, if this is a now thing for you, we still got 3 months left in the year. Now's your chance to take action, make the changes, make the shifts. And so I would encourage you to get really honest with yourself, get honest with your team, and say, we are going to make this change now, not later, not someday. I'm not going to hope. I'm not going to do status quo until next year. It's a now thing. And if it's a now thing for you, type the word now in the comment or send me a direct message here on LinkedIn. We'll schedule in some time. We'll grab 15 minutes, 20 minutes so I can learn more about your situation. So number one, I can figure out if or how we can help you. And if we can't, at least I can point you in the right direction. But if we can, then we can spend some more time together and talk about how that might work. Let's have that conversation. So that's it for now. That's my Go Farther Friday. Thanks for listening. Let's do this. See ya.